Okay, airspace. Let's jump into it. Here are the key terms for airspace. Those come directly out of the guided flight discovery. And straight down the list, we'll learn about all of these here. Okay, airspace classifications. Well, some things that I need for operations in airspace include a two-way radio. That's an example of a two-way radio. That's your Bendix King KX165 Alpha, right? Whew. Man, oh man, it works. We've seen some of these, right? We have some in the airplanes that we fly. Some of them are the Narcos, some are different radio types. Some of them are the Garmin units, the 430 and 530 or 630. I think one of them has a touchscreen, right? 4.1 Mike Echo has a little touchscreen in it. Okay, that's fine. All sorts of different radios that we have that we can use. Something else that we use to communicate with ATC, this is a GTX 330. Okay, this has the Mode S capability and ADS-B out capability. Okay, so all of our airplanes have to have transponder equipment that can satisfy the Mode S and the ADS-B out requirements. If you notice, pressing this function key allows this to scroll through a couple of different functions. One of them is flight time, from the time at which I exceeded 30 knots, 40 knots, whatever it's set to. Another function shows me my flight level. You know, where am I at for pressure altitude? Flight level 060, okay, 059. All right, that's pressure altitude. Another one shows me my airplane identifier, what the registration is. Another one gives me a elapse timer. I got a count up and a count down. I can start and stop that timer and press clear here. So this is something very useful to use on those cross-country flights. Just set your timer or use flight time. Occasionally you'll hear the term 4096 transponder, a 4096 transponder. Does anybody know, maybe you do, why it's called a 4096 transponder? Most of the time people don't know. Anything?
So you can set only 4,996 codes.
Different codes. That's exactly right. So although I can, although it really doesn't make any difference to me, who cares? I can set 4096. People put it up there on written exams, on different things, and a lot of pilots just don't know. In fact, there's very few people that know as they come through. Function selector, that's fine. Off, standby, on, altitude, test, reply light, code windows. I can put my code in there. There's certain codes that are standard. 1200 means I'm VFR. I'm VFR and I'm not on a discrete code. I'm not in contact with ATC in such a manner that they're going to continue to track my flight. I may be in contact with ATC on 1200 as I approach and get a traffic pattern entry to land. I'm talking to Class Delta, Class Charlie, maybe Class Bravo. Bravo will probably give you a squawk code, but Charlie, Delta, especially Delta, they just talk to me. I'm VFR, I'm 1200, and then they issue a landing clearance, and away we go. Another code that I could have is 7700, and that's an emergency. Okay, I have some sort of emergency situation. 7700. 7600 means I've lost communications. Okay, I'm trying to talk to you guys, but I can't. I don't know what the reason is or the problem is or whatever, but I just can't talk. 7500 means you're being hijacked. Okay. I don't know that we'd ever use that one, but it means you're being hijacked. And into the airspace. Ta-da! There's our airspace classification.
Can I ask one question about transponder?
Yes.
So we were flying on the flight following, and they released us to the tower, to the executive tower.
Mm-hmm.
We had a squawk, some squawk. When should we put VFR squawk?
After you land.
Just only after the land. If we go to...
Like you're doing touch and goes, for instance?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's common. If I have a squawk code and I have VFR flight following, which if we got a TFR up there in Palm Beach, probably a good idea to have contact with ATC. If I come back to this airport or any airport and I'm requesting touch and goes, ATC will probably tell me to squawk VFR on the upwind.
They told us about go around.
Go around.
And they said
Squawk VFR.
But
Yep.
I was unsure that when I should switch VFR because Miami Center released us to tower frequency and
Yep.
we still continue squawking the previous one.
That's fine. What you did was absolutely right. If you go around or you have a touch and go, or let's say you stop and you do a full stop taxi back, you want to reset that transponder to 1200, right? If you land, ATC is not going to tell you to squawk 1200 because they're just not paying attention to that. If you do a touch and go, usually they'll remind you squawk VFR on the way. If it's a go around, squawk VFR. They'll tell you then. So here's our airspace system. It changed in the 90s. We used to have a positive control area, terminal control area, ARSA, TERSA, all this good stuff. This is, in my opinion, a little bit easier to follow. Class Echo airspace is above flight level 600. Class Alpha starting at 18,000 feet MSL going up to flight level 600. Continuing on from Alpha, you got Class Bravo, big busy Boeing, whatever you want to call it there. These are all different sizes and shapes. There's no real definition to a Class Bravo. And you'll see what Class Charlie there is. With Class Bravo, it could go up to 7,000 feet like it does here in Miami. It could go up to 10,000 feet like it does at a lot of other ones. There's no real set size and shape to these things. They're all tailor fit. But they do have shelf areas. You can see here I've got a core area that goes to the surface and then a shelf area that I could fly underneath. And I could fly, of course, I could fly over Class Bravo. But if I want to fly into Class Bravo, I have some requirements. Another shelf area here, again, I could fly underneath that, but some requirements. And some airspeed requirements too. And the next slide we do the speeds. Class Charlie, usually 20 nautical miles all the way across. 4,000 feet from the surface to the top. The shelf area is from 1,200 to 4,000 feet. That core area is a 10 nautical mile diameter. So 10 here and 20 there. And these are almost all the same. Whew. There's always the almost or except when. The almost all the same means that Class Charlie should be those same dimensions, except go to Palm Beach. There's a little cutout for Lantana. Go to Fort Lauderdale International. There's a little cutout there for us, right? So there may be some cutouts for other airspaces. Class Delta. Delta has normally a 2,500 foot top, but not always the case. Could be less. Could be 1,600, whatever. That could be less. I got to look at the chart. And as far as diameter, there's no set diameter for Delta. They're all just fit to whatever small airport you're going into or business or executive airport that you're going into. Okay. That's Class Delta. Class Echo is everywhere else. Except that you have Class Golf, which is uncontrolled airspace. So as where the FAA really kind of shifted gears with this uncontrolled or controlled airport, And now they call them non-towered airport. And they're really trying to resonate that term. This is 100% uncontrolled airspace. This airspace and all of the other airspaces are controlled. Even that one, because that's Class Echo. Class Golf is the only one that's uncontrolled. It can go, in certain instances, it can go up to 14,500 MSL. Okay? Normally in mountainous terrains, remote areas, they don't need control over that airspace. So there's no radar coverage and there's no control. Class Golf usually exists below 1,200 feet, like this airport. It's a non-towered airport, no instrument approach. Below 1,200 feet, it's all uncontrolled. I have different rules for flying in uncontrolled airspace. If I look at a non-towered airport with an instrument approach, anytime I have instrument approaches involved, any kind of relationship between ATC and an instrument pilot on an instrument flight plan, they must remain in controlled airspace. So, controlled airspace in this case, Class Echo, goes all the way to the ground. And in other areas, Class Golf goes to 1,200 feet. I see it right here. But it may have a shelf area around some other airports where it goes down to 700 feet. So Class Golf is really the only one that's a little bit pretty straightforward. Questions on airspace? This is tremendously important. You can get yourself in a whole heap of trouble by not adhering to airspace.
How to identify Class G and the top of the Class G on the map?
So you'll have, let me see if I got a sectional chart right here. You'll have these lines. These lines are showing Class Bravo because that's blue. Yeah. These lines are showing Class Charlie because it's magenta. That segmented circle is magenta, and that tells me that Class E goes all the way to the surface there. This tells me that Class Echo goes down to 1,200 feet. And look at, it doesn't give me a great, right here. See this? See that shaded area right there? All of this?
Yeah.
That tells me that Class Echo airspace goes down to 700 feet. That shaded area right there, that transition zone right there.
Okay, below is the Class G.
Below 700 feet inside that is Class Golf. Outside that is 1,200. And then you could have some that extends it up to 14,500. Any other questions on airspace?
About ILS.
Well, instrument approach doesn't have to be an ILS.
Uh-huh.
Any instrument approach.
Yes, I know, but non-towered airport with instrument, it means what this airport has ILS?
It means it has an instrument approach. It doesn't have to be ILS. It could be RNAV, it could be VOR, it could be anything in the world. That airport might look like this. That's a non-towered airport that has an instrument approach, and it contains controlled airspace all the way to the surface. This one might have an instrument approach, I don't know, but it doesn't have controlled airspace to the surface. It just has controlled airspace down to 700 feet. That's all. Right. Okay. Let's take a look at a couple of the interesting fields and interesting data fields on all this airspace. So look at the column on the left. Entry requirements, minimum pilot qualifications. Do I need two-way radio communications? We'll talk about what does that mean. Is special VFR allowed? What are my VFR visibility minimums and distance from clouds? That's a VFR aircraft separation. Who's responsible for that? Traffic advisories and airport application. Of course, everything is going to have its exception here. And we'll go through a few of these. AGL is above ground level, FL is flight level, and MSL means sea level. All right, fine, fair enough. Going through the columns, Class Alpha. Class Alpha, where was that one? That one's up there in the flight levels. Flight level 180, flight level 300, all the way up flight level 600. If you can get it, go for it. It requires an ATC clearance. It requires an instrument rating. So I have to have a minimum private pilot certificate and an instrument rating. Have to. Plus an airplane that can get up there. It requires two-way radio communication. Okay? Now, two-way radio communication means that I have broadcast a message. ATC receives and understands that message and then broadcasts back to me another two-way radio communication. Okay? So this tells me automatically that none of this chart is true if I have an emergency. Because if I don't have two-way radio communications, I'm not going to descend below, get out of Class Alpha airspace. Maybe I'm continuing to go where I'm going. I don't know what the case may be. But barring an emergency, I have to have two-way radio communication. So leave the emergencies completely out of this case. Special VFR is not allowed in Class Alpha. Special VFR allows me to operate with reduced visibility and reduced distance from the cloud. What's the VFR minimums? All this VFR stuff doesn't apply to Class Alpha. No such thing. Will I have traffic advisories? Yeah. What kind of traffic advisories do I get up there in the flight levels? Well, it's not likely that you'll have another airplane that is on a collision course with you. They're separated by, depending on if you're RVSM or you're not, they're separated by 2,000 feet or 1,000 feet, whatever it is. Okay? Not likely we're going to crash into each other. But it is very likely, maybe very likely, it is likely that you could encounter another pilot's wake turbulence. And that could be damaging. I think, was it American Airlines or Southwest, one of them, years and years ago, that crashed, broke the tail section off the airplane? Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
In California.
Yes, in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, I think it was over the Grand Canyon.
After this...
I meant another one, a crash.
Yeah.
During the bike turbulence.
So it's not uncommon.
Takeoff and the KFJ.
Yeah, yeah.
A300.
That stuff could happen. These are big jets, you know. So certainly, I'll get aircraft separation or traffic advisories in Class Alpha airspace in the flight levels. All right, Class Bravo entry requirement. I have to have an ATC clearance. Great. I got to have private or student certification. But with a student certification, you need to have an endorsement. Mm-hmm. So you got a student pilot certificate, right? Student pilot. You can't go into Class Bravo not solo. Of course, if you go into Class Bravo with a flight instructor, they are pilot in command, so they can go in there. You can't enter Class Bravo without an endorsement showing that you've satisfied the requirements of Class Bravo. All right, fine, whatever. Or get a private pilot certificate, then you can do it. You have to have two-way radio communication. In fact, I have to have two-way radio communication for Bravo Charlie Delta. Echo is a little different. That's fine. Special VFR. Is that allowed? Yes. Special VFR means if it's not depicted on the chart, so Miami is Class Bravo, but it says right on there, special VFR is not allowed. Okay? So it could be allowed, but some restrictions apply. This is what I call the moneymaker, because for the written exam and for the oral exam and for you to fly within your legal responsibilities, I have to know what the visibility minimum and the separation from clouds are. Class Bravo, 3 statute mile, just stay out of the cloud. Just clear the cloud, that's it. I don't have any requirement other than that. Here, here, and here, yeah, I gotta have 500 below, 1,000 above, and 2,000 horizontal. All right, back to Class Bravo, looking at aircraft separation. I don't get aircraft separation there. Traffic advisories, I do get traffic advisories. Airport application, well, radar, instrument approaches, weather, control tower, high density, that's fine. Those are your airport applications. Those are your big and busy airports. All right, Class Charlie and Delta. This requires two-way communications. I need a minimum of a student pilot certificate. I need, like you said, two-way radio communications. I could have special VFR. And the visibility minimum that I need is 3 statute miles. 500 feet below, 1,000 above, and 2,000 horizontal. For aircraft separation, I need I get aircraft separation for IFR aircraft, and this I just get runway operations. So Class Delta, they're only responsible for runway operations and maintain separation. Okay. Will I get traffic advisories? Class Charlie, yes, you will get traffic advisories. Class Delta, it's only workload permitting. So while I'm flying in Fort Lauderdale Executive, I may receive traffic advisories, but they're not required to give that to me. So see and avoid. And then airport application, different things, right? Class Echo, those are the ones for everywhere. I have to have prior two-way radio communication, student pilot certificate. Two-way radio communications are required if I'm on an IFR flight plan. So I have to have an IFR flight plan and a clearance before I enter controlled airspace on an IFR flight plan. But if I'm not IFR, I can fly Class Echo all I want without any type of two-way radio communication. I'm in Class Echo, which is normally where we are, not talking to anybody. Special VFR is allowed. VFR's visibility minimum is 3, 5 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal. I don't get aircraft separation, workload permitting on my VFR flight following. They're not going to tell me where all the airplanes are. It depends on their workload. And then Class Golf, man, I barely have any kind of restrictions at all. No entry requirements, student certificate. I don't need to talk to anybody. I can't fly special VFR. That's okay. You know why? Because the VFR minimum is special VFR. It's 1 statute mile clear of clouds. No aircraft separation. If I'm in contact with ATC, I could get workload permitting some traffic advisories. And it requires a control tower or some sort of center operator to work this thing for me. Know your airspace requirements. This is just something that has become more and more important as the years go by. Okay? September 11th really changed a whole lot for us in the aviation community over here. And that was one of the things that really became critical. Because honestly, you would see some activity if someone inadvertently entered some airspace, but most of the time they weren't doing anything. After September 11th, it became a real deal.
Excuse me, I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes, sir.
2,000 about horizontal. 2,000 miles. It means if
2,000
I have-
miles?
Feet. Oh, feet. Sorry, feet. If I have 2 clouds, the destination.
4,000.
I need 4,000. Yes.
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 A minimum, and that's if you're exactly in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, hang on.
Does that make sense? If you're exactly in the middle, you'll have 2,000 foot separation. You're cutting it kind of close. Here's my question though. Who brought a ruler? Anybody have a way to identify exactly 2,000 feet?
No.
It's pilot discretion. And
Be as safe as possible.
Exactly. But also to continue my operation. So, you know, what's that scattered layer of clouds look like, and can I climb above that? And it's pilot discretion. Like you said, certainly to be safe. But then there's also a judgment call. Am I safer below this cloud layer at 1,000 feet, or can I go above it where it's perfectly clear and I got to come pretty close to 2,000 foot? It's all judgment. And that's something that there is no right answer to. The right answer is that. But the right answer is, I can't look at a cloud and I don't have a figure over here that pops up on my eye HUD and shows me 2,000 feet. I wish I did. That would be cool. So it's all judgment. You have to work that judgment between, it's all life lessons. You've been making judgment forever. Okay, we've already looked at this chart just a little bit. We know that we've got a couple of areas right there, kind of interesting. Take a look here. I know something very neat about this airport, and I know it has a control tower because it's blue. But I know something else very neat about that airport, and that is this runway is, if I'm not mistaken, we'll have to pull up the legend. I think that tells me that the runway is greater than 8,499 feet, or whatever the case is. It tells me this is a very, very long paved runway. Right? And the other one, it falls below that. That's why you still get the circle. You get the tick marks and all that other stuff. But that runway is a very, very long runway. Here, I've got the descriptions of each shelf area. So each one of these shelf areas will have 8,000 feet to 3,000. All right? Here it has 8,000 and 1,900. It tells me what the limits are, what the altitude limits are. And all of this area goes only up to 8,000 feet. That's fine. That works. This is probably, this is Cleveland. Here, I've got what kind of airspace with that dashed blue line? Class Delta. Okay? Class Delta, and it goes to 3,000 feet. We said it usually goes up to 2,500, but not always. It does not always have to go up to 2,500 feet. This one goes to 3,400 feet. You know, you got a nice tall Class Delta there. Okay. So, couple of different things. Like I said, the best way of going about this, pull out a chart, get the legend next to you, and start identifying what's what. Some of the things that you should know, the different airspaces and what those boundaries look like. This thin magenta line right here, anybody got an idea what that means?
Which one?
This one right here. That is the Mode C veil, right? And it says it right here, 30 nautical miles. I have to have Mode C. Well, we have to have Mode S everywhere. So I don't know if they're going to change that or not. They probably will, but it might take a little while. All right. Okay, another look at airspace. This really highlights the idea behind Class Golf and how it could go up to 14,500 feet. Because here I have what's called Mount Hazard or Mount whatever. This mountain is huge. Huge, huge mountain. So Class Golf airspace could go up to 14,500 feet. But remember, I also have Class Golf airspace below 1,500 feet AGL. So I have Class Golf airspace up here at the top of that huge mountain. Okay? Something else interesting happens at 10,000 feet. 10,000 feet, we have to have a Mode C transponder. Well, we all have Mode S now. We don't get a choice. So certainly the rule has changed. But also at 10,000 feet, I get this thing with no airspace, or correction, no airspeed. So I no longer have an airspeed restriction at 10,000 feet. Below 10,000 feet, airplanes are restricted, civil airplanes, civil aircraft, I suppose, although it would be hard to find a helicopter that's going to go that fast. Civil aircraft are restricted to 250 knots. So below 10,000, I can't go any faster than 250. On the indicated scale. So my true airspeed could be much faster. My ground speed could be way faster. Okay, fine. But I can't show more than 250 on the indicated scale. Then the lights. Okay. FAA and I think ICAO and a bunch of other agencies all adopted this concept that below 10,000 feet you should have all of your lights on. Okay, that's fine. There's certain operations that does not work well with. One of those operations are operations that never go above 10,000 feet. If you're at 10,000 feet and you're in one of our airplanes, it's probably the only time that airplane will be above 10,000 feet the entire year. It's not common that we're above 10,000 feet. So they have the caveat, 10,000 feet or not in cruise flight. Oh, all right, I could probably agree with that, 10,000 feet not in cruise flight. So if I'm in cruise flight, now I can turn all my lights off and so forth, well, except for the rotating beacon. Or if it's between the hours of sunset to sunrise, I need to have a nav light on. Okay, so 10,000 feet, we're talking lights. Maybe I'll agree that, if we're in cruise flight and below 10,000 feet, we'll turn the lights off. Here's the problem. Show me where it says that in our checklist. We use the normal checklist, and we could adopt and use, we could change any checklist that we want to, except for the emergency checklist. So we could add and modify and change the order of the normal procedures in an airplane. We could do that. It's in accordance with and in compliance with the rules, and the FSDO could come over and inspect us, and that's fine. That's why a lot of times you see pilots using the checkmate checklist, that little hard plastic checklist that makes it convenient. You can flip it back and forth. Okay, that's fine. The normal checklist over there is not the same as the normal checklist in the Skyhawk AFM. It's just not. That's okay. The emergency procedures are the exact same. They have to be. So I could change this, and we could change it where it says cruise checks. During your cruise checks, strobe light off, nav light off. I don't know why you'd have that on. Landing light off, taxi light off, all this other stuff. Here's the problem. Some of the lights that we have on these airplanes are LED. You could leave that light on for almost ever. It's not going to stop working. It's not going to blow the bulb, right? Not very likely. But an incandescent light, the one that has the little filament in there, the little vacuum tube with the filament in there, that one is not going to work very much longer than 10, 15 hours total. Okay? So if we have pilots always turning all the lights on all these airplanes below 10,000 feet, well, they're always going to have the lights on the entire time. And the other thing is, they probably don't have the light on at all. They probably just have the switch in the on position. There's no light because it's already blown. So now when it comes time for us to do your night training, because now you'll do night training pretty soon, you can't do it. You're supposed to do 3 hours of night training. We come out, hey, great, I'm going to fly 737 Bravo Alpha or Charlie Yankee, whichever one. We got all kind of different airplanes now all of a sudden. I want to fly that airplane. We've been ready to fly it. Great, we got it ready. We turn on the nav lights to check, and there's no white light in the back. We turn on the landing light, and the landing light doesn't work. That's because all the other pilots were flying below 10,000 feet with every light in the world on. And it doesn't work very well, not in our operations. So yes, there is a rule, suggestion. There is a thought process that suggests that I should have my lights on, they call it operation lights on below 10,000 feet.